Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching TopTenzNet, and in the video today we're looking at the top 10 famous people who didn't actually exist.
Number 10. Masal Bugoluv. It seems that every few years, rumors arise about mysterious athletes in obscure countries whose talents are guaranteed to change the future of sports. One of the more recent examples concerns Masal Bugoluv, a supposed 16-year-old soccer prodigy from the small Eastern European country of Moldova. News of the phenom first broke on soccer blogs and forums, where Bugoluv was described as a surgical striker who already played for the Moldovan national team. Soon enough, the mainstream soccer media, known the world over for their tendency to play fast and loose with the facts, had picked up on the story. The popular website Goal.com posted news about the player in early January of 2009, and even the Times of London was on board, listing Bugoluv as Moldova's finest and linking him with a possible move to the famous English club Arsenal. But the more the rumors about Massi began to heat up, the more they became suspect. After some background checking and research, a soccer blogger named Neil McDonnell was able to prove the truth. Masal Bugoluv didn't exist. In fact, the whole media whirlwind was all a hoax allegedly perpetrated by an Irishman who was fed up with the glut of fake information circulated during soccer's transfer season. In order to test just how unreliable media outlets were, he had decided to invent his own player. With the help of fake Wikipedia articles, blog posts, and falsified reports from the Associated Press, he created a cult following for what turned out to be the greatest soccer player who never was. Number 9. Pierre Bressau. At some point, we've probably all looked at a piece of modern art and thought anybody could have painted that. In 1964, Swedish journalist Dag Axelsson actually put this claim to the test. In what has come to be a famous hoax, he took a series of paintings by a chimpanzee named Peter, a ward of the local zoo, and began circulating them around Sweden as works of an unknown French artist he called Pierre Bressau. In order to put art critics to the test, Axelsson chose a few of Peter's best paintings and set up an exhibition in Gothenburg. Sure enough, the mysterious Mr. Bressau was hailed by some as a bold new talent. One writer even claimed that the work showed all the signs of an artist who performs with the delicacy of a ballet dancer. Surprisingly, once the paintings were revealed as the work of a primate, none of the art critics retracted their praise. In fact, Rolf Anderberg, the critic who'd been Bressau's biggest champion, insisted that Peter's work was still the best thing at the exhibition. Of course, not all the critics fell for Axelsson's ruse. One writer reportedly remarked that only an ape could be responsible for the paintings. Number 8. David Manning. Film fans and critics often rail against so-called quote whores, reviewers who are willing to write a positive notice for any movie as long as the studios wine and dine them enough, and David Manning of the Ridgefield Press was seemingly one of the worst. Around 2000, his glowing reviews frequently appeared on the posters of such universally loathed films as The Animal, Another Winner, and Hollow Man. Stupendous. Manning would have been a running contender for America's worst film critics, save for one key detail: he didn't exist. As it turned out, a marketing executive at Sony had invented Manning as a tool for building positive press for films released by the corporation's subsidiary, Columbia Films. Newsweek discovered the deception when a reporter contacted Ridgefield Press, a small weekly paper in Connecticut, only to discover that no one named David Manning had ever worked there. The incident proved to be a major black eye for Sony's marketing division, and a spokesperson for the studio would later claim that they were horrified by the whole episode. Not only that, but it also cost them as much as $1.5 million after two moviegoers in California sued the studio, saying that the Phantom film critic had unfairly lured them into seeing bad movies. Number 7. Allegra Coleman. These days, there are plenty of people who are famous for not really doing anything, so it only seems fitting that someone could become a celebrity without actually ever existing. Allegra Coleman was a fake starlet invented by journalist Martha Sherrill. As part of a large-scale media hoax, in 1996, Sherrill wrote an article for Esquire magazine declaring Coleman to be Hollywood's next dream girl. She even got model Ali Larter, not yet famous, to pose as the actress on the magazine's cover. The article contained all the usual celebrity hijinks, from battles with the paparazzi over supposed nude photos to a rocky relationship with actor David Schwimmer. Sherrill intended the article to be a satire of the puff pieces that fill so many gossip magazines, but it was also telling about the way Hollywood works. Even after the whole affair was revealed to be a hoax, publicists and agents were still frantically trying to sign Allegra Coleman to their agencies, and the whole episode ended up jump-starting Ali Larter's acting career. Number 6. Sid Finch. Legendary journalist George Plimpton is famous for trying out for the Detroit Lions and sparring with Sugar Ray Robinson, but one of his most memorable stunts was the creation of a phantom baseball player. In April of 1985, Plimpton engineered one of the all-time greatest April Fool's Day hoaxes when he published an article in Sports Illustrated detailing the arrival of baseball's next superstar, an unknown pitcher called Hayden Sid Finch. The piece stated that Finch was a mysterious 28-year-old who'd spent time studying at Harvard and searching for inner peace in the Far East. He'd never played organized baseball before, but thanks to an unorthodox wind-up that gave him the ability to throw a ball at an unbelievable 168 miles per hour, he was considering signing up with the New York Mets. Plimpton's article went on to discuss Finch's many eccentricities, which included wearing only one hiking boot when on the mound, playing the French horn at a professional level, sleeping on the floor, and speaking in cryptic Zen koans. The article was accompanied by pictures of Sid Finch, played by an unknown high school teacher named Joe Burton, hanging out with other Mets players and the coach. After a brief uproar of fascination and disbelief, Sports Illustrated received almost 2,000 letters about the story. The magazine announced that Finch had held a press conference announcing his retirement from baseball. A week later, they finally came clean about the hoax. Number 5. Pope Joan. One of the most famous popes of all time is one that modern-day scholars believe probably didn't exist. Pope Joan was a figure who was once believed to have served as pontiff for a few years around 853 to 855 AD. A story first appeared in the 13th century writings of a Dominican friar called Jean de Mailly, and for centuries it was a well-known legend in Europe. The tale came in many forms, but the most popular version described Joan as a pious and brilliant woman who, after disguising herself as a man, rose quickly through the ranks of the Catholic Church and was chosen as pope. Her reign supposedly came to an end while riding on horseback one day when she suddenly fell ill and gave birth to a child. Here the story takes many different turns. Some versions say that she died in childbirth, others say natural causes, and others still say that an angry mob murdered her. While historians have found enough evidence to reject the idea that Pope Joan ever really existed, there's no denying her legend played a major role in the religion of the Middle Ages. Number 4. Lonely Girl 15. The internet has long been a breeding ground for hoaxes and alter egos, and Lonely Girl 15 is perhaps the most famous example. The name refers to the YouTube handle of a 16-year-old girl named Bree who started posting video blogs on the site in 2006. At first, the videos were nothing more than the online diary of an average high school student, complete with quirky effects and complaints about how boring her hometown was. Lonely Girl 15 quickly became a hit and was eventually the most popular channel on YouTube. But after a few episodes, Bree's growing fanbase began to be suspicious over whether the videos were a hoax. A number of websites and forums soon sprang up, and amateur detectives began poring over the videos looking for clues and inconsistencies. It didn't take long before it was discovered that Bree was in fact Jessica Rose, a 19-year-old LA-based actress, and that her YouTube account was actually a carefully scripted media hoax designed to eventually expand into a full-fledged television show. The whole episode briefly made Lonely Girl 15 a cultural phenomenon, and the show continued for a further 2 years, eventually taking on a quasi-sci-fi plot that featured a sweeping narrative and multiple characters. The character of Bree, once considered by many to be a real teenager, was killed off in the show in 2007. Number 3. Tony Clifton. Comedian Andy Kaufman was famous for playing with audience expectations by mixing performance art and mysterious alter egos into his stand-up. One of his most famous creations was Tony Clifton, a washed-up, vulgar, and often drunk lounge singer who served as the opening act for Kaufman's comedy gigs. With his terrible singing voice, confrontational attitude, and tendency to forget the lyrics, Clifton summed up every stereotype of the aging Vegas entertainer and soon became a popular character. After it surfaced that Clifton was actually being portrayed by Kaufman in costume and makeup, something both men denied, Kaufman enlisted both his brother and his friend, Bob Zmuda, to portray the character on stage in order to further the illusion that he and his creation were separate people. Tony Clifton was soon making appearances on everything from David Letterman's late night show to Dinah Shore's talk show, where he was famously thrown out of the studio for dumping a plate of eggs on the host's head. He was even slated to appear as a special guest on the sitcom Taxi, but was kicked off the set for being disruptive. Kaufman died in 1984 without ever revealing the truth about the character, and even today it's not widely known how many times he actually appeared as Clifton or how many times an accomplice stepped into the role. The gruff lounge singer has continued to make appearances since Kaufman's death, which has only furthered the illusion that Tony Clifton is actually a real person. Number 2. Alan Smithee. Director Alan Smithee has enjoyed a long and varied career, which has seen him make everything from feature films to television pilots, cartoons, and music videos. He'd be one of Hollywood's most prolific filmmakers, if not for one key fact: he doesn't exist. Since 1968, directors who wish to have their name removed from the credits of their films have used the name Alan Smithee as a pseudonym. Alan Smithy was first employed by Don Siegel on the film Death of a Gunfighter, and it's since been used whenever a director feels that their creative control over a film project has been compromised to the extent that the final product is no longer their work. With this in mind, Alan Smithy now has 73 directorial credits on the website Internet Movie Database, including such lamentable productions as Hellraiser Bloodline and Solar Crisis, along with other TV projects including episodes of The Cosby Show and MacGyver. Mainstream directors have also used it when movies have been edited significantly for exhibition on television. The Directors Guild of America officially abandoned Alan Smithy in the late 90s after the release of a film called An Alan Smithy Film, Burn Hollywood Burn, which drew unwanted attention to the name. Since then, unhappy filmmakers have chosen their own pseudonyms, but others continue to use Alan Smithy as sort of a tribute. In fact, since 2000, the Phantom director has racked up a further 18 film credits. Number 1. Prester John. There might be more well-known entries on this list, but none of them had the same influence on world politics, religion, or exploration as Prester John, a mythical king who was once believed to have presided over a Christian empire in Asia. His legend dates back to the 12th century, when it arose as an amalgam of adventure stories, true histories of Christian missionaries, and the exploits of Alexander the Great. Prester John and his kingdom became a true sensation in 1165 when a letter, supposedly written by him, began circulating around Europe. According to these fantastical sources, Prester John was a direct descendant of one of the three wise men. His kingdom, which was suspected to be in India or the Middle East, was seen by the Europeans of the time as a shining light of civilization in a region that was viewed as exotic and barbarous. Prester John himself was believed to be a kind and wise man who ruled over an empire of great wealth, and his kingdom was often said to include such wonders as the Fountain of Youth and even the Garden of Eden. Despite little evidence of his existence, the legend of Prester John persisted for several hundred years, and for a time he was even linked with the Mongol warlord Genghis Khan. It would take until the 1600s before academics and travelers were able to prove that Prester John was nothing but a myth, but in the interim, the legendary king had managed to affect everything from religion to world trade. Not only had missionaries stepped up their efforts in Asia and Africa in the hope of discovering Prester John's kingdom, but explorers like Magellan were encouraged to seek out new lands in the hope that they might one day stumble upon the mythical ruler.
So I really hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please do hit that like button below and don't forget to subscribe. Also, over there on the right, a couple of other videos you might enjoy if you enjoyed this one. One is the top 10 famous people with surprising dark sides, and below that we've got the top 10 people who accidentally became sex symbols. So if you liked this video, you'll probably like those as well, and thank you for watching.